In Bath, midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London, it was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. We dropped off our Christmas shopping at the hotel. Then it was off to be spellbound at the Theatre Royal Bath. There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
Why is Lizzie going rental for Fizzy Haze? Is it because her flat is so beautiful and spacious? Snazzy! Or has roof terrace, garden and party room? Surprising! Or because it's 18 minutes to Paddington? Easy! With friendly staff on hand to take any deliveries? Amazing! Or just because her fuzzy friend can live there too? Find your new home at fizzyhaze.com. Fizzy Living. Reinventing renting.
They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
Right now, the future is being written by people like you. Creative thinkers, tech lovers, problem solvers. Are you going to stand by and watch? Well, show the world what you've got. Join others around the UK on an EY degree apprenticeship in digital and technology. And earn a salary working with exciting businesses while studying towards the degree. Don't let the future pass you by. Get involved. For more information and to apply, search EY Digital Apprentice.
It's time to do a bit of Debenhams with up to 30% off our favourite coats, knitwear and boots for the whole family and 20% off throughout home. Shop now in store and at debenhams.com.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and be unlimited because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Should we go halves?
I'll get this. Let me just get my card. Which was in my pocket.
You can't control awkward first dates. But if you temporarily misplace your debit card, you can freeze and unfreeze it on our mobile banking app. Feel in control every day. Lloyds Bank, by your side. You can only freeze some transaction types. T's and C's apply.
Stock markets here in Europe are just opening up for a brand new trading session. All eyes still on the developments around Brexit after a rejection yesterday of MPs of the timeline proposed by Boris Johnson to push forward with his withdrawal agreement. Also, just in the last couple of minutes, in terms of some of the international events we've been watching around Hong Kong and the continued protests, we've just seen Hong Kong legislature officially killing that controversial extradition bill. So just one to watch as we see markets look for how much risk appetite to put on the table at this point. And what we saw yesterday, Wall Street, very curious trade with a lot of headline reports for some of the big companies as they crossed with numbers for the quarter. We still saw enormous focus on Brexit as the trading session faded, and we saw some of the selling take place on the back of the Brexit news yesterday in the States. So it seems investors very much paying attention to some of the big events globally. 410's down the benchmark, the starting position for the European session. Let's take a quick look at what we're seeing at the individual sector level as we begin this trading session with not much green on the heat map behind me. At the top, household goods, at the bottom, banks, but every sector trading in the red as we start out the day. Banks are trading down by close to 1%. We've been talking today about Mario Draghi's swan song, so perhaps a little bit of risk event as we count down to tomorrow and what Mario Draghi may say in his farewell speech. But so far, Swedbank, RBS, Lloyds are among some of the weaker ones. So a couple of UK names reflecting perhaps some of the Brexit developments in that basket. Auto stocks also traded very weak. We've had an update from Peugeot today, from Continental on the tyre side, but every stock is trading weaker. Retail stocks also sliding. Technology, this is a bit of a reflection on some of the disappointment around Texas Instruments overnight after the Bell reported. Very weak forecast, and that's knocked a lot of rivals in after hours, but also in the Asian markets and at the open here this morning, as you can see. Financials, 0.5% lower. Telcos trade in the red. Chemicals down by about 1/3%. We had the likes of Novozymes reporting numbers today. Food and drink off by about a tenth. Household goods just below the flat line, as you can see. So slightly more defensive tilt to this market yet again at the start of the session. In terms of the individual indices, let's take a look at the starting point, 7208. We're holding on the UK market, holding this level. Very strong session yesterday playing out. And don't forget, there's been a lot of trade around pound, which has impacted the FTSE. Every time we've seen that strength up to the 130 mark, it's provided a bit of a headwind for that UK market. But we've had a little bit of lessening up on that pound trade with a bit of Brexit disappointment in recent sessions for sterling traders. The rest of the markets, we are down 0.7, very weak start for the French market, giving up 0.4 on the DAX. This market was flat yesterday, and across the board on the periphery, you can see roughly down 0.4. The SMI in Zurich about 0.25%, slightly more protected given the defences weighted on that index. Let's get into the Brexit developments in case you've missed them, and I'm going to show you some of the UK banks as a reaction. What we've got, British lawmakers have approved Boris Johnson's new deal with the EU, but then moments later MPs rejected the government's timetable for approving the agreement. It is now up to the EU to decide whether to grant the UK an extension to next week's October 31st deadline. And as you can see, only one stock in that basket of banks moving into the green. Let's take a quick look at some of those home builders as well, likes of Persimmon, Barratt, Bovis, Taylor Wimpey, and you can see it is mostly a weaker one for some of those big names in the basket. 2.5 down, 2.7 now for Persimmon, 1.8 for Taylor Wimpey in the red, and Barratt sliding close to 2%. The big story in the semiconductor space that we've been watching for you, the US chipmaker Texas Instruments has issued a weak outlook citing the impact of trade tensions. The tech company said it expects revenue in the fourth quarter to come in between $3.07 and $3.33 billion. That is below analyst expectations. Texas Instruments had previously warned that a slowdown in demand for microchips would last a while. In the space, ASML trading down 1.7%, Infineon sliding, big selling in Siltronic, which is down 3.7%, the hardest hit in the basket of stocks. Jeff.
Thanks very much indeed, Karen, for that. It's interesting you make the point about stock picking and baskets of stocks, because I think that's what we need to get up to now. And let's set aside some of this big macro chat and let's get to Nicholas Davidson, Senior Portfolio Manager for Equities at Alliance Bernstein. Nicholas, nice to see you this morning. Refreshing to have someone on who can talk stocks. In fact, both of you can talk stocks, so I think we're in for a treat now. Can I just dive straight in with a couple of companies here that you've named that you feel represent idiosyncratic bottom-up opportunities? And I want to begin with Masmovil. This is a Spanish business. What is it about this company that makes it attractive to you in this environment?
Yeah, good morning. Let me just start with a general point, and then I'll come on to Masmovil. I think we're at an interesting point in markets at the moment where clearly there's a lot of gloom around, but there is also the potential for a big rally if we see some of that gloom lighten. So I think it's very important in equity portfolios that you have a mix of exposures, companies that will be a bit more resilient if things get worse from an economic point of view, as well as those that will benefit. And I think Masmovil is definitely in the first category. It is a bit more defensive in the telecom sector. And telecoms has been a difficult area for stock pickers. Very high capital expenditure requirements, a lot of pricing pressure. That's put pressure on companies' cash flows. So Masmovil is an interesting, slightly niche opportunity in Spain. It's a new entrant, and it has an unusual business model. It both has its own infrastructure and shares infrastructure, so it provides both mobile and fixed services, and that gives it a very beneficial cost position. It's just done a new deal in Spain with Orange. That's reducing the costs of rolling out further mobile infrastructure and fix the home. It's going to increase its footprint. It's going to have lower costs going forward. So it's an interesting niche opportunity in what's typically been a fairly unattractive sector.
I mean, as we've looked at this market here in the UK, you've seen too many competitors driving down margin opportunity and utility-like performance generally across the telecom space. And even that, you know, with the Vodafone dividend cut, hasn't looked that exciting from an income perspective. But Spain is different, right?
Yes, it's not just Spain. As I say, we're buying the fourth operator rather than large ones. Vodafone operates in Spain. I think what you say is right. It's been a challenging sector, but you can still find some opportunities.
Just looking at a story out of the States overnight, Verizon offering some of its customers free access to Disney Plus, the new streaming service that is coming. It's a change in mindset. But if you think about giving some of the content away for free, where's the upside for a lot of these players if it's back to basics and the plumbing effectively that they provide for customers? There's not going to be the extra add on top from the content and services.
Yeah, well, I think in the context of the US, it's about a battle for share. If there's not much overall growth in the market, clearly the way people are looking to grow earnings is by taking share from each other. Providing additional content can be one way of doing that.
Arkema, if nobody wants to talk any more about Masmoville, let's move on. Arkema, this is a French company in the chemical space.
That's right.
We've gotten used to, I think, looking at chemicals companies, and we had Novozymes CFO on earlier, and getting a bit gloomy about the outlook just because they seem to be so cyclically geared. Why is Arkema different?
Yes, so I think what you need to look for within the more cyclical sectors is companies which can be resilient through the cycle. And what we've seen with Arkema is they have a very good mix of different businesses. And we saw in their last results, although for sure volumes were down, like other chemicals companies, they're suffering from problems in the industrial sector generally, but their margins were actually up sufficiently to drive some top-line growth. And I think within the more cyclical areas like chemicals, that's really what you want to look for, companies that are going to be resilient through the cycle. Peugeot, which you had on earlier with their results, another very good example.
Yeah, what's your view on Peugeot? Because obviously, you know, we've been a little down on the auto manufacturers for most of the year here, and I think that's reflected in the valuations. Yeah. But bit of head scratching that PSA has managed to do reasonably well in terms of share price performance here.
Yes, I think the parallel with Masmoville would be it's a good company in a bad neighbourhood. I agree with you, the auto OEMs, very challenged, demand has been falling, competition is intensive. Within that sector, within Europe, Peugeot's done a fantastic job of reducing costs, at streamlining its model lineup. It did that first in France, now it's doing it in the UK and Germany as well. So again, as with telecoms, even within a challenged sector, it's possible to find some companies that perform well.
And whilst I understand what you're saying, Nicholas, about the relative performance of this company, they still only make, and again, this is the key line for me, and it's a repetitive line I keep seeing in industry, they're reiterating their target for 4.5% recurring operating margin on average in automotive unit from 2019 to 2021. So they're only offering us, for the next couple of years, 4.5% operating margin, despite the fact that in this brave new world, they've got this great new range of EVs going forward. They can still only make 4.5% per car if it works. It's not offering me much to work with if this goes wrong slightly.
Yeah, but low margin businesses can still be very cash flow productive, obviously, and that's what we're looking for as investors. It's not the margin that matters so much, providing the cash flows are there.
Do you think this is I mean, you're almost like, well, is it a good cash flow business? I'm struggling on this one, given the fact that this industry has got it so badly wrong on emerging market and Chinese growth. I mean, the industry, I'm not picking on Peugeot here, but if ever an industry got a growth story wrong, it is the automotive industry in China.
Well, we'll see, I think, is the answer to that. Clearly, there's been a big downturn in Chinese demand. Demand was pulled forward. Peugeot has rather less exposure to some of those emerging markets than its peers. It's actually got more exposure here in the UK relative to peers.
Well, that's very interesting you should say that, because I always thought the big selling point of the last 3 years of Peugeot was the fact that they got this Chinese stake and that this was actually going to give them a wonderful launching pad to the Asian markets.
So that's part of the story. I think the story with Peugeot, as I say, is less about the long-term growth, which is a struggle for car manufacturers. It's more about operating efficiencies, being able to address a wider range of segments of the market with a smaller number of models.
Norma is another automotive. They're exposed to the automotive industry, isn't it? Is it Norma? This is the German company, yeah? Just I mean, look, I don't know if the team can scramble a chart together on Norma as well, but just tell us a little bit about it. This is your pick in that sector.
Yeah, I mean, what we've been buying in terms of cyclicals is sectors where we can at least see light at the end of the tunnel, and that means a stabilization of the second derivative or first signs of improvement.
A stabilization of the second derivative?
Yeah, which basically means...
Deconstruct that for our viewers.
Which means that the PMI data has kept falling. The economic surprise index for Europe has fallen since early 18, and it keeps falling. At some point, it will stop falling. We're looking for the signs in what areas do we see first signs of stabilization, and then a potential improvement. The car space is interesting because it fell off a cliff because of the testing changes in Q3 2018.
You mean that people asked them not to lie?
Exactly, that the base became very low. So what we could see is that at some point, as the base gets dramatically lower, the growth rates would go from negative to positive, which is basically European car sales. So what we've been buying is the best suppliers of the car space. Keep in mind that in the small and mid-cap space, there are no real OEMs.
The next generation, kind of like Karen's like the bridge here between us four gentlemen and the next generation. But the next generation, apparently they don't buy cars. Just so we all know that around the desk. You talk about European consumers and European a base case scenario.
In terms of the long-term trend, I think I would agree with that. So the point is that what are the best business models within the car supplier space? We like the tires. Why do we like the tyre manufacturer? And Nokian Tyre is a good example. A well-flagged profit warning yet again. I think it's now their third in the last 12 months. It's an oligopoly, good pricing power. You're not really that tempted to go off and buy Chinese tyres because you don't trust them. So you probably will buy a brand name for your own car. Therefore, good margins, good healthy returns, and Nokian Tyres is one of the best in the space. Now, all these names have come back a very long way. They're down 40-50% in many spaces. Not expensive, neither in the large cap space like Michelin nor Nokian. And Norma falls into that category. It got as high as 66 euros. In summer, you could pick it up at 26. It's the global market leader in clamps. Every time there is a wire or pipe within the car, in the engine space or anywhere else, you basically need a clamp to fix it. It is a dominant market leader. It traditionally makes 17-18% EBITA margin. Currently, it is suffering from the low demand that we've seen in the first 9 months, hence the margin falls down to 13-14%, and you've got a range of profit warnings. At some point, it becomes too cheap. That is where we got to early in the summer. And the point I made earlier is, yes, they might roll over yet again as we go through the bear market of 2020, but we probably will not see fresh lows. I think the floor has been set in some of those names. The reason why I say that is because even on rebased earnings expectations, here we've been starting to buy free cash flow yields of 10, 11, 12, 13%, which is dramatically above our own cost of capital and starts to imply upsides of 50 to 100% with very limited downside. It's that attractive risk reward that has drawn us into buying cyclicals in Europe for the last 3-4 months.
I thought the same point around lows, that we couldn't reach new lows on some companies in the sector with autos, and then we saw Renault reporting the other day, and then the stock probably tumbled yet again on another profit warning. How do we look at some of these big autos in the basket with more bad news as they transition to electric, hybrid and self-driving in future?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we really shared the point of view that the better value within the auto sector is typically to be found among suppliers rather than the OEMs, where the overcapacity problems are very evident. We have a bit less tyre exposure. We have a bit more exposure to companies like Valeo and Faurecia. But we do think there are big challenges for the OEMs. You're better to play the opportunity, I think, versus the suppliers, who typically, the big difference is with where they were back in the last cycle. A number of them were close to bankruptcy in 2008. Now their balance sheets are much more resilient. I think you're right that if we see some marginal turn in sentiment and in the data, those stocks could do very well.
But I love this conversation, Nicholas. But I've met Jacques Aschenbroich many times, and we've had him down the line. We've had him around the studio, and I've met him at some of their investor days. I really like the guy, actually. I really like their message. But you talk about buying cash flow companies. Well, I mean, in our previous conversation, this company, I really thought, this is amazing. They've got all this lovely technology that's going to go into all these new vehicles. They were 66 euros. They got down to 22. The volatility that we are buying when we buy these stocks for our investors, for our viewers, whatever, you're giving them a hell of a lot of volatility in their portfolio.
So, as with any active investment, getting in at the right point is obviously crucial. You can't always manage it well, but I think we are now at a point where a lot of the car suppliers in particular, the valuations really don't capture the full cash flow potential. But I think the point I'm trying to make is even if you love the story and you get the fact that this is brilliant technology, and again, I'm not anti the technology, I love all these amazing gadgets that are going onto these cars, they are incredibly volatile stocks. Because, and also, if nothing else, they trade at 2 or 3 times the value of the OEMs that we were just previously mentioning.
Can I just make a point here? I mean, we've talked about bubbles, and we finally have Mario Draghi himself acknowledging he created a bubble. The biggest bubble of them all has been the low-vol bubble. and that is stocks that don't have any inherent volatility because they are perceived to be growth stocks forever. And what we see with the Novozymes of this world, Christian Hansen's and other of those highly rated stocks is as they start to disappoint, you get serious downside. Why? Because many of them are now on 30 or 40 or 50 times earnings. And that is why you start talking about the Novozymes, because they get seriously hit. What is interesting is, as there is no value to be had in the low vol space, is that all the opportunity is in the high beta space. They have gone down 50, 60, 70% because they are high vol. The world has sold Europe for the last 18 months. Europe has seen 100 billion of outflows in the last 12 months, and nowhere was that more reflected than in the cyclicals. We got to those buying opportunities because they are high beta, and because they're European, and because they're cyclicals.
And we're still, I think, troubled by the catalyst that generates that upward re-rating. And I think that's where Steve and I are coming from on this argument, that cheap can get cheaper or can stay cheap if you're heading into an end-of-cycle downturn driven by growth, potentially. But we'll come back, we'll pick up the conversation in just a second. Karen, back out to you. How is PSA Group doing?
Well, this is the message about not missing out on the opportunities despite all the concerns you might have around a sector. I mean, Peugeot, Citroën stock, take a look at it for the last 3 months, a rally of close to 10% or 9.5% on the boards, despite a bit of a drift today in session down 0.2%. The latest from this company, from PSA Group, is that it has posted a rise in third quarter revenue as demand for its high-priced SUV models help compensate for flagging global sales and negative exchange rate effects. But the Peugeot maker expects that revenues will shrink in all major auto markets this year. That includes Russia, where it had previously forecast 3% growth. ABB has topped earnings estimates in the third quarter, and this is moving its stock towards the top of the Stoxx Europe 600 today. All this despite a 15% drop in profits. The Swiss engineering company cited weakening conditions in the US and China, blaming trade tensions for a fall in orders. Chief Executive Peter Voser said the robotics and automated divisions were under the most pressure. The stock, it also has been a little bit firmer in the last 3 months, some of it thanks to this move that you're seeing, 3.3%, the stock up about 7%. To Heineken in the beverage space, and the stock is down 1.8% today. Very weak 3-month performance too, as the stock is down about 5%. It's narrowed its profit forecast for the full year. The world's second biggest brewer has predicted that operating profit before one-offs this year could come in at around 4% at the lower end of previous guidance. Now, despite posting a 2.3% rise in beer volumes in the third quarter, meeting expectations, a decline in the American market was offset by double-digit growth in Asia Pacific. Plenty coming up on the show, including SoftBank taking a majority stake in WeWork as it looks to turn around the embattled office space sharing company. Find out just how much former CEO Adam Newman could be paid. Stick around for that after the break.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. If you buy items from EU suppliers or sell to EU customers, there'll be new requirements affecting businesses of all sizes. You'll need an EORI trader number and know how to make a customs declaration. You'll also need to make sure you have the right supporting documents for the goods you buy and sell. Find out more about how to prepare. Follow the step-by-step guide at gov.uk/Brexit-traders.
You're in charge of hiring, and Indeed has solutions, like online skills tests, which let a candidate show that they are the right hire. And we give you this toy monkey, who will bang its symbols when the right CV appears on your desktop. Okay, there is no monkey. There is no monkey. But there are online skills tests.
See why more than 250,000 companies in the UK use Indeed for hiring. Visit Indeed.com/try today to try skills tests for free today. Terms and conditions apply.
What if your email was organized by project and not by date? What if everyone looked at the same thing instead of their own inbox? Then it wouldn't be email at all. Forget your fragmented, jumbled inbox and make the change to channels in Slack. Spaces dedicated to individual projects, topics, or teams. All your communication is neatly organized and everyone is on the same page. Slack. Choose a better way to work. Get started at slack.com.
I spy with my little eye something beginning with B. Bike.
Nope. Banana tree.
Oh, of course. We must have missed it.
Although you might not be able to see it, your small actions can have a real impact with Shell. Drive carbon neutral by filling up and using Shell Go Plus today. Make the change. Drive carbon neutral. Shell. Go well. See goplus.shell.com/CO2 for details.
Time is money. Or so money says. Well, money. I know you like to dictate every hour of every day, add to my to-do list and throw the odd spanner in the works. But not anymore. This is my business, and I run it on my watch. I'm in control now, money. And times are changing. Save time with instant business invoicing, now on the Barclays app. Search Barclays Business and make money work for you.
Must have a Barclays business account. T's and C's apply.
Welcome back, everybody. A quick update on this story that the FT has been running with, that China is going to replace Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam. Some response this morning from the Chinese Foreign Ministry holding its regular press briefing. They say, on the FT report of plans for replacing Hong Kong chief executive Lam, this is a political rumour with ulterior motives. Now, that is a direct quote, which isn't a denial, but by the same token isn't a resounding endorsement of the FT story. We will continue to watch and monitor and see what we get next. Karen.
Jeff, thank you very much. I want to take you to a couple more stocks we're watching for you. And one of them is the French retailer Casino. I can barely accuse this company of sitting on its hands. Management's been very busy with a whole bunch of technology deals, but also around the financing side now, as Casino has unveiled plans to raise 1.5 billion euros in additional bank loans to help strengthen its finances. The French retailer, which already faces scrutiny over its debt load, says the move will allow the group to focus on meeting its strategic objectives and support potential asset disposals. Where investors have had some concerns has been around the parent company of Casino. Share price performance stunning, 32% higher just in the last quarter. Swedbank, we saw a pretty weak outing at the start for this stock. The bank is sliding 2.7% currently. Its third quarter profits have fallen short of expectations, coming in at 4.6 billion Swedish crowns. This as costs pile up to manage several government probes into money laundering, the scandal at its Estonian business. Sweden's oldest retail bank has lost around 40% of its market value since the allegations surfaced. Jeff.
Thanks very much indeed, Karen. Let's just talk a little bit about some of the other stories that are making the headlines. Shares in SoftBank dipped after the Japanese tech company agreed to take a majority stake in WeWork. The deal will see SoftBank raise its investment in the office space sharing company to more than $13 billion. WeWork will also be valued at $8 billion, down from the $47 billion valuation targeted by the company before a failed IPO attempt earlier this year. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that former WeWork CEO Adam Neumann will be paid as much as $1.7 billion in exchange for his voting rights. Nicholas Davidson is with us, Senior Portfolio Manager for Equities at AllianceBernstein. Ralph Yanes is here, Fund Manager at Centricus Asset Management. Not to dwell for too long on this, but is WeWork emblematic of anything that we need to now bake into our stock selection process going forward?
Well, we'll see. What it may be emblematic of is that investors are going to start looking again for actual earnings and actual cash rather than just the future hope of earnings and the future hope of cash. We'll see. If that's true, I think there are some broader implications. The US market obviously has led the European market for a long time, partly because of those very high growth tech companies. If we start to see a bit more focus on cash flow today or tomorrow rather than in the distant future, that could be a catalyst for some shift there.
One of the things that's come out of our conversation here, I think, is the expectation that Europe is on the verge of some kind of recovery of fortunes for stock pickers. Can you just explain why we should be getting excited about Europe at this stage?
Well, I think Ralph made an interesting technical point early on. We've seen huge outflows. If that reverses, then you can see a big rally. I think fundamentally it depends on where we are in the economic cycle. There's an awful lot of pessimism baked in. The IMF reduced their forecast for global growth again yesterday. I think you only need to see a fairly small inflection to a slightly greater degree of positivity about the future, and then European stocks, which on average, and only on average of course, are more exposed to the economic cycle than US stocks, they should do well. And we saw in September, of course, a big style reversal in markets when we did see that interest rates just going up a little bit. It sparked a big shift in leadership within the equity market.
Some of the reporting suggests we might be getting primed for a phase one deal, a completion in the next couple of months, which could potentially mean before Christmas. And if we get further news on Brexit, two big catalysts that have been driving markets might actually be solved at this point, enough so that investors can move forward. What do you think that means in terms of where investors pick up stocks that they may not have in the portfolio at this point?
Yes, again, I think the key points in both those areas is that the worst tail risks seem less likely. And again, that's going to, at the margin, I think, be more positive for stocks which have a little bit more risk or a bit more cyclically exposed, including in Europe. I don't think we should get too excited. I don't think the US-China dispute's gone away, but at the moment people are thinking the risk of further escalation is lower and some kind of settlement is likely. That's going to be good for industrials, other more cyclically exposed stocks.
Thank you, Nicholas. Really enjoyed the conversation today. Thank you very much indeed for that. Nicholas Davison, Senior Portfolio Manager, Equities at Alliance Bernstein. Ralph, you get to stay with us. Also coming up on the show, the UK looks set for another Brexit delay. Yes, another one, as lawmakers reject the government's legislative timetable. More from Willem when we return.
They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
Right now, the future is being written by people like you. Creative thinkers, tech lovers, problem solvers. Are you going to stand by and watch? Well, show the world what you've got. Join others around the UK on an EY degree apprenticeship in digital and technology. And earn a salary working with exciting businesses while studying towards a degree. Don't let the future pass you by. Get involved. For more information and to apply, search EY Digital Apprentice.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and V Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
With the new Halifax Family Boost mortgage, children can get help to buy their first home, and mum and dad earn interest on their savings. Everyone's a winner. The new Halifax Family Boost mortgage. Halifax makes it happen.
Your home and savings could be at risk if mortgage repayments are not maintained. Only available in England and Wales. One applicant must hold a Halifax Reward or Ultimate Reward current account. Conditions and exclusions apply.
And to say happy birthday, we're giving you a pair of award-winning Silver Galaxy Buds.
But it's not my birthday till June.
No, but it's ours. 10 years ago, we launched our first Galaxy smartphone. And to celebrate, we're giving customers who purchase any Galaxy S10, Note 10 or A90 5G the chance to claim a pair of amazing wireless Galaxy Buds.
Wow, and I didn't get you anything.
Get the latest Samsung Galaxy smartphone now at your local EE shop or ee.co.uk. Offer available on purchases made by the 23rd of October 2019 and claimed online within 30 days. T&Cs apply.
The B&Q 3 for 2 offer is now on, including an unmissable 3 for 2 on all paint, such as Dulux, Valspar and Farrow & Ball. For this show-stopping deal, hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you're 3 for 2 it. Every third item a single transaction in the send-in price order free. Offer ends November 3rd. See DIY.com.
European equity markets taking stock as earnings season ramps up and UK lawmakers reject the time frame to pass Boris Johnson's Brexit bill, putting the ball back in the EU's court.
The EU must now make up their minds over how to answer Parliament's request
for a delay. And the first consequence, Mr. Speaker, is that the government must take the only responsible course and accelerate our preparations for a no-deal outcome.
A political rumour with ulterior motives. China's foreign ministry slams a report Beijing is making plans to force out the Hong Kong chief executive, Carrie Lam. A stock outlook from Texas Instruments chips away, get it? Chips away at European semiconductor stocks. The US tech bellwether lowers its profit forecast for the year, blaming the US-China trade war. And ABB trades higher as third quarter net profit falls less than expected. But the Swiss industrial group warns of weaker conditions in the US and China.
Markets here in Europe have been trading for half an hour so far. It's a weak session that's been playing out. The handover from Wall Street also negative, and we saw that response on Wall Street as investors looked at the timeline around Brexit that was voted down at Westminster, and that destroyed some of the risk appetite in session. Then the negativity spilling across to the stocks Europe 600 this morning at the start of the session. Some of the weak patches, the French market trading down by 0.6%. German stocks also marking lower but modestly south versus that selling on the French market, and in fact the UK stock market trading higher. But that is the reverse correlation between pound and UK stock market that we're seeing again at this point in time. May not continue. We've not always seen that same negative correlation at key moments around Brexit, but it's certainly happening at the moment where you've got some weakness in sterling and the UK stock market trying to gain some territory. But on balance, we're trading down by about 1/3%. Let's get into the sectors. All weaker at the start of the session, reading right across these boards. So you can see in 30 minutes, we have now seen patches of green start to materialise on the boards. Oil and gas, very weak start, now race to the top position, up 0.4. Basic resources going with it, so slightly more cyclical trades going on here, along with chemicals. At the bottom end, we've got technology. That is a spillover from Texas Instruments. Very weak report card that the semiconductor gave overnight, causing its stock to plummet in after-hours trading. All this around the forecast for revenue for the current quarter to fall 10 to 17% from a year ago, well below estimates, impacting rivals across the world, domestically in the States, in Asia today, and also here in Europe now. Banking stocks weak, financials, real estate among the underperformers on the charts. Let's get into the stocks. A little bit of Q3 earnings reaction. You're seeing that in the store brand numbers as the stock races high by almost 7%. Nesta also reported today. Q3 reactions are very positive. Pandora right at the top, double digit. Look at that. I haven't seen that for a while in this stock. 10% higher after you see an upgrade to the recommendation by Carnegie to hold for this stock, and that's moved the needle on it. Nokia and Rencat trading down 4.5%. And here's some of the reaction to the numbers from Texas Instruments and Finia stock down 4.1%. Also Swedbank around the update that the company's given today. Estonia, money laundering is still an issue for this company and the cleanup that's taking place at the bank. And you can see the stock sliding in session today. Steve.
I'm with you, Karen. I was like, wow, Pandora up 10%. No, just looking at the chart. Indulge me a moment. 5-year chart. The high was May 2016, 992. I guess that'd be Danish kroner, 992. And you can see there that they have bounced very successfully off the June low of 217. So they were around about a fifth of their value. And now they've put on about 50% since June.
Can't write off affordable luxury, apparently.
my point is...
Charms, I think, isn't it? Did you see that? I think they've relaunched the whole charm thing, haven't they?
The dangly bracelets, where you just keep adding extra little bits.
There was a time when certain gentlemen I know, we just couldn't stop buying them for the loved ones in our lives.
Is that right?
Yes, but other jewellery makers are available. Well, no, less now because links have gone bust.
That and expensive handbags, I think, for you. Luckily, that phase is over.
They're never really... Well, I did the expensive handbag thing in the 90s when they were less expensive. Yeah. It went about... See, when the LVMH Goose of this world were like that, and then they went like that, and I was like, they left me far behind, Karen. Unlike your husband.
Mrs. Sedgwick has low expectations.
Unlike your significant other half, he's still in that game, isn't he?
Mr. Thompson's still in stride.
Enough of our personal habits as Christmas dawns. British lawmakers have voted to proceed with Boris Johnson's new deal with the EU, but moments later, It's about half an hour, actually. MPs rejected the government's timetable for approving the agreement. It's now up to the EU to decide whether to grant the UK an extension to next week's deadline, 31st of October. Willems in Westminster, Sylvia's in Brussels. Let's start off with Willem. Of course they're going to let them have an extension, aren't they? I mean, that's the conventional logic. We'll get to Sylvia on that. But Willem, how long does the Prime Minister want, seeing as his new best pals with everyone over at the Commission?
Well, what's going to be really interesting over the next few months is to try and figure out how soon we could see a general election, because if that extension does go longer, then clearly Boris Johnson will be itching to hold a national poll. He has done relatively well in recent polls, and he feels confident. In the past, he's said that he would be able to defeat Jeremy Corbyn as leader of the Labour opposition party. Now, what we've heard this morning from some members of the Labour Party in Parliament is that they would allow that election to go forward. And of course, don't forget, just a few weeks ago, they refused that opportunity when it was afforded to them by the Prime Minister. They've said repeatedly they'd like to make sure that the possibility of a no-deal Brexit, they say that would be economically damaging to the UK, is off the table. And now that it seems to be, if that extension is indeed granted by the EU for up to 3 months, then there's no real reason left for them to object to an election. The one argument that remains, though, on that front, though, Steve, really interestingly, is the idea that under the current terms of this new negotiated settlement between the UK and the EU, there is still a possibility of a no-deal Brexit, but it wouldn't be until the end of 2020, and that would be if trade talks between the two sides break down and no request for an extension of the so-called transition period is made before the end of July. Now, given that trade talks may not really begin in earnest until the spring, that is still a very contracted short window for those trade talks to succeed sufficiently that the government feels confident they will get them concluded by the end of next year. And the concern amongst some Labour lawmakers is that if they're not successfully concluded, they could see a no deal once again re-emerge towards the end of next year, and that's something they might try to take off the table, and that might be a reason why they don't allow an election anytime soon. Of course, this all relies on quite how the European Council, the 27 member state leaders, will react to this request that was made by the Prime Minister on Saturday, and for that, Sylvia in Brussels is best placed to explain what could happen next from the EU side.
We're still waiting from the European Union whether they will say yes to this request for an extension. But also the big question for the EU at this stage is when will it take this decision? And I've asked that to different officials here in Brussels. One of them told me that the EU could potentially take that decision as early as Thursday, but the same official also said that that decision could easily happen next week. A second official also told me that there's no clear indication of when the leaders will announce how they feel and what they will make of this request for a third extension. Very much will depend on the conversations that Donald Tusk, the president of the European Council, is having with the different European capitals. But at this stage, we should not prejudge how the EU will decide. Let's not forget that the European rules state very clearly that the EU needs to make a unanimous decision. So in other words, if one country believes that the extension until January 2020 is not enough, that they would like more time or a shorter period of time, then the leaders could potentially have to come to Brussels and discuss that in more detail. But let me just make one final remark about the implications of another delay to the Brexit process. Now, we had European parliamentary elections back in May. At the time, UK parliamentarians, UK MEPs, I should say, were appointed to work in the European Parliament on the basis that after Brexit, those lawmakers would leave the European Parliament, that is a direct elected chamber of the EU, and some other lawmakers from other European countries would come and replace those seats in the European Parliament. Well, those elected people from countries such as France, such as Italy, have to wait longer in order to start their own jobs. And then just another consequence, another implication acceleration of the Brexit process is really, as Willem was just mentioning there, that the transition period becomes shorter as well. So if there's another delay until January 2020, then there's going to be less time to talk about the future relationship, their future trade relationship as well. So for the time being, we're still waiting for the EU to come up with this decision. We could potentially hear from them in the coming hours.
Very much indeed for that, and thank you, Willem, as well. I was going to ask Willem a question, but he's got a couple of few technical questions. Okay, let me ask you guys instead. What are you doing on either the 5th or 12th of December? And no, I'm not talking about a Christmas party. What do you want to do?
Buying Christmas presents?
Thursday, the 5th of December. Thursday might give it a little bit of a clue away. Or the 12th, which is a week later. What are you doing, guys?
Is that general election day, you think?
Why do you think it's those particular days? Why is it narrowed down to...
Because you need a certain time frame to be able to kind of obviously go to the country as well.
6 weeks to make the preparations.
Pretty
necessary.
much, yeah. So we're kind of, if you're going to get it in before Christmas, those are the weeks those are the 2 weeks, 2 Thursdays. We always have a general election in the UK on a Thursday that are being talked about.
And how annoyed do you think the British public will be about going back to the polls just before Christmas?
Depends how you sell it, doesn't it? Yes, we haven't had one for a year, so we didn't have one last year, which makes a change. Yeah. We had what did we have? 2016. When did we have the first election? With Cameron getting back in again. 2015? 2016 Brexit. 2017 Mrs May's, which was a little bit of a disaster for her, of course. So we haven't had anything for a while. So it's been a whole year off. We're supposed to have a fixed-term parliament act, which means every 5 years. Hey, what about a political room with ulterior motives? What's that about?
Well, those were the comments from the Foreign Ministry this morning in China.
Yes.
As they looked at that story surrounding the fortunes of Carrie Lam. So this was a report that was carried in the Financial Times suggesting that Beijing is about to replace Carrie Lam and that there would be an interim CEO Chief Executive put in her stead. Now the Chinese Foreign Ministry have said that this is just a political rumour with ulterior motives. Let's have a listen to Eunice's view on this report.
Beijing is reportedly drawing up plans to replace embattled Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam. The Financial Times is quoting sources as saying that an interim chief executive would be installed by March and serve out the rest of Lam's term, which lasts until 2022. It's widely believed that Lam has seriously mishandled several decisions that sparked the massive protests months ago and which have fueled anti-Beijing sentiment. Authorities here would likely be careful, not wanting to appear as though Beijing is caving to pressure from the protesters. The FT quotes sources as saying that Beijing would like to see the protests die down further before making a switch public. In fact, any speculation today of Lam's departure is being heavily censored. So who would replace her? The FT says one possible successor is a son of a textile tycoon, former financial secretary Henry Tang. Tang campaigned for the job in 2012 and was favored by Beijing then, but ran into local issues. Another option is the former head of Hong Kong's de facto central bank, Norman Chan. He's been a defender of the Hong Kong dollar peg. Two other potential candidates are the current financial secretary and an advisor to Lam, but both are seen as too close to her. The timing of her replacement would be interesting because it would be made in time for China's annual parliamentary session, the National People's Congress. President Xi Jinping would have to sign off on a switch. It's still unclear, though, how much her replacement would placate the protesters and ease the rift between Hong Kong and Beijing. Eunice Yoon, CBC Business News, Beijing.
A US diplomat has testified that President Donald Trump did indeed make military aid to Ukraine conditional on Kiev investigating political rival Joe Biden. William Taylor made the comments before 3 House committees leading an impeachment inquiry against the president. Trump, however, insists there was no quid pro quo.
President Trump, however, has drawn anger from lawmakers from both the Republican and the Democratic Party for describing the impeachment inquiry as, quote, lynching. Politicians from both sides of the aisle have condemned the president's use of the term, which has been used historically to refer to racially motivated killings in America's South after the Civil War and into the 1960s.
In other news, Facebook's CEO Mark Zuckerberg is set to tell a congressional hearing in Washington that the tech company will not go ahead with its Libra cryptocurrency project without regulatory approval. In prepared remarks seen by CNBC, Zuckerberg will defend the digital coin, saying it can help more than 1 billion people who do not have access to a bank account. However, he will add that Facebook, quote, is not the ideal messenger for the plan. Coming up on the show, we'll be joined in studio by the CFO of X5, Russia's largest food retailer, as the company reports a fall in third quarter net profit.
Got to tell you about our beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Next, we donned our skates for Bath on ice. I'm a natural. Didn't have to hold on to anything or anyone. There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Brexit will bring changes that affect businesses in many ways, particularly if you buy from EU suppliers, sell to EU customers, provide services to EU clients, and receive customer data from other businesses in the EU. Businesses need to prepare. Find out how at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Carl's all changed casserole.
So, Chloe walks in from school. Tears all over her face.
Daddy,
She says,
I don't want to eat animals anymore.
I blooming love my meat. But not as much as I love my little girl. That's why we've made some changes to our old favourite, sausage casserole. Now with meat-free Cumberlands, but still with my magic touch. A dollop of mango chutney. Just as tasty as it used to be.
Better, actually.
Make your own with the new Tesco Plant Chef range. Food Love Stories. Brought to you by Tesco.
And to say happy birthday, we're giving you a pair of award-winning Silver Galaxy Buds.
But it's not my birthday till June.
No, but it's ours. 10 years ago, we launched our first Galaxy smartphone. And to celebrate, we're giving customers who purchase any Galaxy S10, Note 10 or A95G the chance to claim a pair of amazing wireless Galaxy Buds.
Wow, and I didn't get you anything.
Get the latest Samsung Galaxy smartphone now at your local O2 shop or o2.co.uk. Offer available on purchases made by the 23rd of October 2019 and claimed online within 30 days. T&C supply.
In the dictionary, a podcast is this: a digital audio file made available on the internet, typically as a series of which new installments can be received by subscribers automatically. But on TuneIn, a podcast is this.
I'm Rachel Martin with David Green, and this is Up First from NPR News.
And it's defined like this.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
From news, sports, to pop culture, comedy, and beyond. Define your own podcast possibilities on TuneIn.
Welcome back, everybody. Russia's largest food retailer, X5, has reported a 72% drop in third quarter net profit. The company says it's been impacted by the transformation of its carousel hypermarket business, which cost the group 5.3 billion rubles. Let's talk about the business. Svetlana Demyashkevich is with us, the CFO of X5 Retail Group. Svetlana, nice to see you in London.
Nice to see you.
I think last time we spoke, I was outside the Kremlin and we were on the road.
Another time we saw each other in St. Pete,
Yes,
I believe,
yes, you're
during the
absolutely
forum.
right. Yeah. Well, good to have you here. Thanks very much for
Thank
coming
you.
to us on set. So just talk to us a little bit about the current fortunes of the business then, because obviously people are looking at the headline numbers this morning and just asking where we go next with X5.
So actually, we had quite a good growth in the third quarter of the year of 12.4%, mostly in our proximity and supermarket formats. And we believe that the focus should stay with these formats. Hypermarkets, as you know, are experiencing problems not only in Russia but worldwide. So we decided to transform the format. We'll transfer 34 of the hypermarkets into supermarket format, which will give us more profitability and sales densities going forward, and we'll close inefficient hypermarkets. So overall, for X5, I think it's a positive move. Yes, we will have some non-cash write-offs during 2019, but for long term, I think it's a very positive decision that we're making.
I know the guys want to jump in with questions around the digitization and how you're adjusting the business model, but can I ask you just a headline question about consumer resilience in Russia? I had a chance to talk to the finance minister when I was in Washington at the IMF, and this was just one of the issues I brought up with him, that the potential growth rate for Russia still remains very strong, and yet the delivery of growth is much lower than the apparent potential here. Now, I don't know whether fiscal or monetary policy helps that out, but it does mean surely that you're just not seeing as resilient a consumer as you might have done if growth rates were better.
Well, actually, as you see, FOREX 5, for leading company as leading retailer in Russia, we still have quite a good growth. And actually, we see plenty of opportunities for growth for us going forward. So our share now, only 11.6%, and we expect it to rise to 20% by 2029. We still see plenty of opportunities for consolidation of the market in retail. For example, in 50% cases, we're just replacing existing retailers when we're opening new locations. So again, we see opportunities for the growth of online retail, and by 2021, we believe that our Перекресток online will become the leading online supermarket in Russia. We really see that the consumers like it. The NPS levels are very high, more than 80%. So overall, I really see that we have growth opportunities for us in retail, and being the leader with the highest economy of scale, efficiency of operation, and digital opportunities.
Economies of scale, I want to get into that because it's a fascinating point. I wonder, just looking at some of your initiatives, we know that home delivery has been disrupting a lot of the big supermarkets across the UK and other markets, and you've tried to address that in your own market with a ready-to-eat production facility. Looking at some of your initiatives to raise capex for IT programs, I wonder whether Russian companies like yours are shielded to an extent from the Amazon effect, because there were efforts to create an Amazon in Russia that's been very stop-start. So you're not seeing that large cannibalization of the market. It's allowed you to almost pivot to be ready for the future with all your transformation programs. That's just simply not happened in the West. Is that the right assumption?
Well, you're right. I think we do have great opportunities in Russia for us to develop internally because we don't have, big external players like Amazon coming to Russia and disrupting the market yet. That's why, we have the opportunities to do our digital transformation internally, to make our processes more efficient, to become a truly data-driven organization, which will bring additional efficiency to us, and to develop new digital businesses like online supermarket, like logistics company where we deliver to pickup points, e-commerce products. So we really think that we have great opportunities for growth.
Svetlana, I'm really worried about the Russian demographic story. The Russian population peaked in the 1990s, around about 148 million. It's around about 144 million today. If the trend is extrapolated to 2050, it goes down by around about 30% to 2050 to 111 million. That is an enormous challenge for a retailer trying to grow its business.
Well, at the same time, we see that with the automatization of processes, we actually have less people involved in the processes.
Yeah.
So maybe for Russia, this demographic situation, together with the, proper digitalization, will be an answer, for people not losing their jobs. So, I'm looking at this positively. So it might be even a positive thing.
Okay, and just a quick word on European demographics, the Russian issues. We're all aging populations. Well, certainly I am anyway, that's for sure. Any trades on the back of the change in demographics?
Population growth rates have improved. In France, they've been quite healthy.
Is that because of immigration?
In Germany, they've gotten much better, partly because of immigration and partly because growth rates got better. The country that looks a bit worrying is the UK, where now the birth rates are the lowest in 10 years. But in general, population growth has probably averaged about 1.5%. It's less than in the US, but it is still enough over time to give you a GDP growth that will be...
I wish we had longer to speak to you all. We've got to say goodbye. Svetlana Demyashkovich, thank you very much indeed. Nice to see you. Longer next time. Ralph Yates, longer next time. Maybe 3 hours with you as well. Thank you very much indeed. From Jeff, good to have you back at the helm, Jeff. From Karen,
Briefly.
Always good to see you. And from myself, in from the cold, we will see you again tomorrow.
When I'm on Fast Money, it's a complete rush. It's fun, but...
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. This means that travelling to the EU will change. You'll need to check online if your passport is valid for travel to Europe. If you're planning on driving, you'll need to check if you have the right documents to drive. And make sure your travel insurance covers all your healthcare needs. To keep your trip on track, check what you need to do at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
The B&Q 3 for 2 offer is now on, including an unmissable 3 for 2 on tiles and flooring, like real wood and laminate. So hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you're 3 for 2 it. Excludes cut-to-measure flooring, flooring accessories and underlay. Every third item per single transaction in descending price order free. Offer ends November 3rd. See DIY.com.
Be honest. How much attention are you really paying to this advert? 25%? Maybe 30% if you're sitting in traffic and the kids have stopped arguing. What about 0%? Well, now's the time to give 0% attention. Because for a limited time only, the entire Mini range is available with 0% APR. All you need to decide is which Mini is perfect for you. Good to know we've now got 100% of your attention. Search 0% Mini to find out more. Who's in?